Good evening and welcome to our webinar about the Renew and Restore Capital Campaign for St. Albans Episcopal Church. My name is Aaron Zimmerman. I'm the rector of the years, and I'm so glad that you've taken time out on Sunday evening to join us and learn more about this historic project. Tonight you'll hear from some of the leaders of this congregation who've been instrumental in this project. And you'll come away with a much deeper understanding of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how much it'll cost, when it'll be done, and how you can participate. This is one of the most exciting and important events in the life of this parish, and Lord willing, will accomplish the renovation of our church space, the space in which I now stand, and the organ will be installed. That will be something that will put this church in a new sphere, musically speaking. To open us in prayer, I'd like to invite Andy Wisely. Andy is a member of St. Albans for a long time, a Baylor professor, former senior warden of this parish, and he and his wife Lynn are the co-chairs of the spiritual committee for this campaign. They'll be leading us in prayer throughout the course of this campaign, and that will begin tonight now as Andy comes up to open us with a prayer.
Let us pray. Almighty God, you have blessed St. Albans with your Spirit for nearly 75 years. Faithful rectors, musicians, children's ministers, staff members, and parishioners have worked and worshiped here. Countless baptisms, confirmations, weddings, and funerals have taken place here. In this very sanctuary, we hear again and again through scripture, word, song, and communion about your love for us. We thank you for the lives that you have changed here for the sake of your kingdom. Now we ask that you guide our plans to beautify these spaces of worship. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen.
What you don't know about Andy is that we do that in just as well as English. Thank you, Andy, for opening us with that prayer. And now we'd like to show you a video. Maybe some of you have seen it, maybe not, but this is a video that we put together to help you understand what we are being called to do. So Neil, roll the clip.
The name of this campaign is Renew and Restore, and it comes from the words that are carved on the wall behind me. It has given comfort to so many to see those words when they come here Sunday after Sunday, but also we used it as a way to talk about what we're doing now, to renew the space that we're in, to restore it, and in some sense to recapture the vision of the founders of this place. St. Albans began with 6 families in 1946. They brought with them a love for worship, a love for music, and clearly a love for beauty and art in a worship space. They had a big vision. What I am so excited to do now is to be part of the project to fulfill and restore the vision that those founding families and leaders had. In 2016, we began a master planning process for our whole campus. Phase 1 was the building of the new parish hall, the welcome center, and some of the spaces that connect that. All of it has been enhanced and improved by these new spaces. We also had a phase 2. Many of the spaces here are deteriorating. So we knew that we would have to address the church because it needs to get done.
To me, this is just the heart of what we're trying to do at St. Albans, because this is the most special place in our church. We're working very hard to preserve the intent almost 75 years ago of what the founders wanted to see in the actual physical inside of the church.
I am really excited about this beautiful place being even more beautiful.
To me, the biggest thing is how we will be able to make our church more welcoming and more accessible and inclusive for everyone.
What excites me most about this project is the focus on rejuvenating and renovating this church space, improving the acoustics for congregational singing, adding a brand new pipe organ by a world-class builder.
The Reuter organ was installed in the 50s and it was purchased as a stock instrument. It has lived a fine life and served the congregation well, but there's so many repairs that need to be done that it's really more cost effective for us to go ahead and purchase a new one that will be custom built.
Having a new organ and a renovated carillon will help us continue to reach out to the community musically. And these are not just assets for St. Albans Parish alone, they're assets for the entire community.
Remodeled sacristy, a remodeled vesting room, more space. We get quite crammed back in the vesting room when we are getting ready to worship. And so I look forward to having bigger space for us to prepare for worship.
We will be tiling the floor, and there'll be a beautiful medallion at the intersection where you can come in from the side.
I just get excited about walking into this place.
The vision of the committee has been to both remodel, restore, but to keep the central characteristics of this space.
I can't imagine a change that would make me feel like it's not home. It's not the sanctuary that I've always known it to be.
Just the ability for us to make the entire space more inclusive, for people to be able to navigate the church more easily, for them to hear and be heard. The fact that we can do those things by also making the church more beautiful and more reverent is a gift for the people who will come after us. I want to support what we can do to make this building welcoming to people and worshipful. The ministry that happens here is enabled better by us caring for and being good stewards of the building.
I have made my pledge because I believe so much in the work that this church is doing and that Aaron and Neil are doing for all of us and for the Waco community.
People should make a pledge to the campaign because we can't do it alone. It only takes the community. It's going to take everybody giving what they can to get it done.
I would just hope that everyone can make some type of contribution, big, middle, small, to ensure that we do accomplish the goals of getting where we want St. Albans to be.
To be a part of this historic work now, building a foundation for generations to come, that my small pledge is a part of that.
If everybody just comes together and takes part in this historic, incredible opportunity, we can do this work, provide for our congregation today and the people 75 years from now and beyond that continue to worship in this space.
So the first thing I want to tell you is why we're doing this now. We finished a capital campaign that was started in 2016 with the grand opening in February of this year, 2 weeks before the pandemic really hit. And so it may seem like an odd time, having finished one capital campaign, to be in the middle of a pandemic, to be in an uncertain environment in many ways. And why do this now? Well, as many of you know from our town hall in August, we received a landmark gift in March of 2020. An anonymous and generous Episcopalian gave us $3 million. And what that allowed us to do was to pay off the remaining construction loan on the parish hall and welcome center, that first capital campaign, and to now accelerate into phase 2. We began a master planning process way back in 2014. We had meetings with the entire congregation. We looked at what our church would need now and in the future for the long term. And the first phase we knew was the parish hall, the welcome center, and the reorganization of our campus. But we always knew that phase 2, the renovation of this space, was going to be the next thing. The space is showing its age in many ways. It's deteriorated since it was built in 1951 through 1953, and it is now time. The organ, which was a stock instrument at the time, has also lived its life with us. And at this point, repairs would be extremely costly, and it is more effective to install a new instrument. So the reason we're doing this now is because of unparalleled generosity towards this church, enabling us to do this project at this time. And because of that generosity and the existing pledges of phase 1, which are now going to be used for phase 2, we can get a jump start on this project. And Lord willing, of 2021. It's been a huge team effort, and I'm going to introduce you now to Florence Kessler-Scattergood, who is the chair of the building committee, former senior warden, and does just about everything else around here. So Florence is going to talk to you about the parts that she's been involved with in this project.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm excited to talk with you tonight and tell you a little bit about the committee
the excitement that we have about this project. Things to emphasize are the fact that there's a lot of continuity, expertise, and experience going into this committee. Several of the members served on phase 1, and so are intimate with what happened then and are ready to move on into this phase. Those that worked on phase 1 were Kay Olson, Kathy Ratcliffe, and Stuart Kelly. The new additions for this leg of the project are Angela Tikel, John Wood, Eugene for us. We started meeting in the spring of 2020 in April, and we've met just about every other week, either via Zoom or in person, to select the experts that are going to work on this project, to go through our wish list, to make priorities, and start making some of the very important decisions as far as aesthetics and preservation. I'd like for us to also note that Aaron and the wardens, Jerry Callan and Larry Adams Thompson, are always present at this meeting, as well as Richard Mason from Barsh Construction, who is going to shepherd us through this leg of the project as well. He was in charge of the project for phase 1, building the parish hall, and it's wonderful to have him segue into this because he knows where all things have been done before and how to seamlessly segue into this. Several of us also served on the organ committee, Kelly and Eugene and Kay Olson, and we all had Doris Scott, who is a very skilled organist and was organist here at St. Albans and at St. Paul's, that lended her expertise to that group as we selected the organ builder. I'd like to now talk about the experts that are going to work on this project. And so we go to the next slide, please. And our partners that we selected as architects are Heim Smith Architects out of Austin. They specialize in historic preservation and restoration of churches, and they are dedicated to integrating the old with the new, and they're very respectful of our wishes and have provided very thoughtful and creative solutions to some of the challenges we have in our older spaces. They listen very well to our priorities, and Eric is the primary behind the computer who produces amazing renderings right before our eyes. And I will say, and I think Aaron will also reiterate, not photographs. If you're missing things, wood carvings, do not dismay because they are not included for a reason. Richard Mason, as I mentioned, is with Barsh Construction, and he is just our right-hand man, and he has come and met with numerous consultants, helped hiring and choosing and giving his expertise on who would be best for our projects. And he also is working with our committee and pricing different items and different areas of the building as we go along so that we can make judicious financial decisions along the way. Let's talk about some of this very, very super specialists that are going to work on our project as well. We have Verdon Bell Company is returning. They are the company that installed our Pet and Fritzen carillon in the 1950s. And this is, I think, the grandson of somebody who worked on our carillon then and has come back, and they're going to take apart do some corrective maintenance, counterbalance the bells, replace the umbrella system, which is the vapor barrier between the cabin and the belfry that keeps moisture from entering the cabin. They're going to redo the hardware, and they're going to refinish the keyboard. All of that is to say that when we finish with this instrument, it will be upgraded to the type of hardware and mechanisms that are commensurate with what new carillons are receiving, but it will still be our historical bells, and it will be much easier to play. So several of us are very interested in that idea. They're going to start pulling the bells in January, and we should be able to be ringing them again by Easter. The bells will not be pulled, the hardware will be pulled. The bells will remain in the tower, but we will not be able to ring them until Easter. Also working super special will be pulling our windows and they will pull the windows. They will be removed, repaired, reframed, and rehung with isothermal glazing, which will protect them from the outside elements. Our windows are very, very special. They were designed by a very important German artist, fabricated in Germany. Our first senior warden here at St. Albans piloted the program, and it took 19 years for them to fabricate and install all the windows here. A labor of love, and they, some of them are in great shape. A few of them have some little cracks, and they will be restored with the same kind of mouth-blown antique German glass that is present in the windows today. They're going to start pulling windows this month because that's a long project. We have quite a few, I think 17 windows to do. And so when you look at the live stream, you may see some boarded up windows, not working, they're being repaired and restored and reinstalled. All of that work will have to be done before we install the organ. We also have contracted with Craftsman Services to do some very delicate work to make sure that the beautiful bas relief carvings above the organ will remain intact and be preserved properly, as well as some minor repairs and other carvings around the church. I think that's all I have to tell you about right now. It's my pleasure to be a part of this. It's very exciting as a person who grew up in this congregation as a child, remembering some of the things as they were and looking forward to seeing the things that they will become. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Florence, and thank you for the literally hundreds of hours you spent on this project. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the changes that will go into the interior of this church, what will be happening. We begin now with a picture of the exterior. See what you see when you walk outside. It's beautiful outside. Our founders had real vision to build something that would stand the test of time, that would not look dated, but that would just improve as it ages and becomes more weathered. Now, as we walk inside, though, we are immediately confronted by one of the first things we want to address, which is the narthex. This is the fancy word for sort of the lobby, the welcoming place that's supposed to transition you from the outside world into the church world. And as you walk into our current space, it is small and it is a little bit cluttered and a little bit crowded. There is a coat rack. There are tables which we use to welcome people with welcome materials. And it is rather low ceiling. It just feels a little bit dim. The doors also on either side have small windows which allow you to see in, but you have to get up close. If you are below the height of those windows, like our many children, and if you were both coming at the window from different sides, an adult and a child, the child would not be visible to that adult. So there's some bathrooms which leave something to be desired. They are smaller than most airplane bathrooms, and they are difficult for people to get into and to use. So one of the first things we wanted to do was to change this welcome area. So you're about to see a slide here that will show you the architect's early rendering of what this space will look like. You can see the doors get glass panes that go from the top to the bottom, but maintain the integrity with the architecture of the space. But this allows people in the narthex and in the church to see into those spaces, and in some ways makes this space flow a little bit more seamlessly into the rest of the church. You can see on either side of those central doors as well some new built-in cabinets, which allow us to store usher materials and newcomer materials and things like that, but to keep them out of the way and to have something that blends seamlessly into the space. You can notice the ceiling now has these coffers, and there you can see two of them, but three. There's sort of these recessed areas that will have cove lighting in them. So again, we'll add a little bit of volume, a little bit of height, and a little bit of brightness to the space. You'll see on the floor that there's a tile pattern. This is an early rendering of it, and the color is not definite here, so don't get worried about that. But it just shows you the fact that instead of this dark linoleum tile, we'll have actual tile that will be fitting for the space and quite beautiful, and also, again, brighten the space. As if you look to the right-hand side of the image, you can see a doorway which will enter into what's currently the women's lounge, and now you'll get this overhead view. So just to orient you to yourself here, you've just come into the church. Let's bring that overhead view back, and you're standing now in the middle of the narthex. This is if you cut looking into the narthex. On your right-hand side is what's currently the women's lounge, which will become a family restroom, accessible, large. Somebody with a wheelchair or a walker or somebody helping their child use the restroom will have plenty of space to do so. We've also made sure that the door, when that restroom is not being used, the door will be open and you'll be able to see that beautiful stained glass window of St. Francis in that space, and also allow some more natural light into the narthex. Immediately behind you as you come in is a new door that leads to a storage area. Now that storage area is currently a very tiny women's restroom, which is, again, just going to become storage space for all those extra chairs and things that we might need for our ushers in our newcomer ministry. On the left-hand side of this picture, you see on the upper left corner, the new unisex restroom, which is just going to be a remodeled version of the current men's restroom that is there. You'll see we've taken a little alcove out of that to connect the narthex again to not necessary. We've now just made that go straight to the window there. You can see on the left-hand side of your screen, an existing window, which again is just an effort to get a little bit more natural light into the space. So these are our proposed changes to the narthex. And if there's not a picture for this, but we'll go to the next slide and you can see, I want to talk a little bit about what's upstairs, which is the gallery, the balcony, and that's also the access to the carillon. And if you were to go up there now, you would see, again, that red carpet, which is worn out its welcome. It is dark up there. There's not really lighting on the floor, so it's very difficult to see where you're stepping. Dark wood, dark carpet, poor lighting. It's not a good recipe. So we want to improve the flooring, improve the lighting. That men's robing room up there, which is hardly used for anything. It used to be the music director's office. Maybe we'll put Eugene back up there if he's naughty. But the idea is that that will become an audiovisual room. We are currently live streaming with temporary fixtures. If you could see around me, you would see lights and tripods and things like that, where we use iPhones to live stream our service. Cameras and microphones and devices that will be very inobtrusive, very subtle, but they do need to be controlled, and we're going to use that room up there as the control room for all our new audio-visual equipment to keep it out of the way and out of sight of the congregation, but still allow whoever's operating it to have quick access to see what's happening inside the worship space. There's also a rail and a glass partition up there to prevent prayer books from falling upon worshipers down below. Anytime anybody so much as nudges that railing, it rattles and is extremely disruptive. So one of the quick fixes we'll do is make sure that that is stabilized and no longer so noisy. The big thing is going to be the new gallery organ that's up there and the overhaul of the carillon. So there's always been an organ in the balcony at St. Albans. This one will be bigger. As you can see, there's the Schoenstein two-dimensional drawing of what that will look like. There'll be a console up there, so it can be played there as well as played from down in the and we'll have much larger pipes that will create a wraparound acoustic experience for those who are in this space. And Eugene will talk more about that in the future, but it really will be a beautiful instrument in the gallery. So if I can see the next slide. Now we enter the nave. The nave is what many people call the sanctuary, but it's not. The nave is the place where the pews are, where the worshipers sit. It comes from an old word meaning ship or boat. It's where we get the word navy. And you really see, if you're in this space, how it looks like an upside-down boat. It's to call the worshipers to mind that we are in the ark of God, the place being rescued from all the evil in the world. So this is our nave. This is what you have come to know and love. If you've been worshiping here since 1996, this is basically what it looks like today and what it looked like then. But before that, it didn't look like that. This space has changed a lot over the years. When we first started, you can see that our building was tiny. We built the St. Albans church building in 2 stages. And this was the first stage, before the tower, before the balcony, before all those big front. Just like we now do in phases, they did it then too. If you'd walked into the church in those days, this is what you would have seen. A tile floor, a velvet rope keeping people away from the altar. There's a lot less furniture up by the altar than there is now. There's some old lanterns, which look a little bit like the ones you see in our cloister in the courtyard, because they are. And you'll notice there is not an organ console, at least not a very visible one, that you can see. If you were to be able to turn around in that space, you would also see that there are no stained glass windows. And also, very noticeable, there's no cross and there's no big rose window or stained glass window in the front. You see a red curtain and some wood carvings, but a very different space. In the next slide, you can see how that changed again. You can see then the addition of a cross in the center. You can see now the nave has been expanded, the tile floor, you can see the pattern there in the central aisle, and the stained glass windows at this point have been installed. You can get a close-up view of what the altar looked like in the next slide. You can see those green linoleum tiles on the floor there, and that red, it's called a docile curtain that was there for many years. So this space has changed many times, and if you now look at the next slide, we're going from something that has become familiar, what looks like this, to now the proposed rendering that you can see from the architect. So there's a couple of things that look like the older version. We've taken the red carpet out. It has served us well and is done. Installed sort of similar to ceramic. It'll be a hard surface, beautiful. It'll brighten the space. It'll improve the acoustics, similar to the treatments to the walls, where we'll add Venetian plaster, which was always, again, the plan of Charlie Higgins and the founders of this church. The cinder block was a temporary measure that stayed around a lot longer than they'd originally planned. You'll see one of the things, and again, this is a rendering, it's not a photograph, this is not exactly what it'll look like, and one of the things they've added is a spotlight to accentuate one change that we're making, which is the moving of the baptismal font to the central aisle. The current location of the baptismal font, it's off to the side by the lectern, and it's almost impossible to see while you're worshiping unless you really make an effort to see it. And the reason for that is because when this church was built, baptisms were never done as part of the main Sunday service. They were usually family affairs on Sunday afternoon, so you didn't need to have it visible for the whole congregation to see. Now, when we're worshipers gather to baptize and welcome somebody to the congregation, to the family of God, you can't even see what's happening. And to have the baptism off to the side sends a theological message, almost like this might not be that important. The altar is clear, the cross is clear, but the baptismal font is off to the side, even though baptism is what makes us a part of the body of Christ and is the rite of initiation into the family of God and is central to our faith and our practice. So we felt like it should be in a central location. And now symbolically, you can see we come through the waters of baptism to now the altar. And from the initiation sacrament of baptism to the one that sustains us through our life, the sacrament of Holy Communion. So that's a big change. We'll make sure that there's room around it for people who need access or for caskets that are wheeled during a funeral service. And the font will be placed on a movable pedestal so that if it needs to be moved out of the way, it can be. Interestingly, it'll be placed such that whether you're coming in from the new doors, from the cloister, or from the original doors in the front of the church, it will be the first thing you see is one of the other things that you can see now as we move closer also is the changes in choir area. So let's move a little closer and zoom in the next slide. You can see here that the organ console has moved. It is on the opposite side that it was before. You can also see that the organ pipes are much more visible, which is not just for an aesthetic reason. It is so that the sound, again, fills the space. I'll let Eugene talk more about that in the future, but suffice it to say that right now, most of our pipes are buried deep in the chamber where the sound has a hard time getting out into the space. One of the things you may also notice is that we've rearranged some of the furniture. There's now flexible ecclesiastical choral seating, these chairs that are put in there, so that we can get much more flexibility in the space. Now, I want to show you another picture in the next slide. This is what we currently have to do when we have guest musicians, if we move back there to those horn players. You can see the current organ, those small one really want to hear buried deep in the back, but you also see that poor trumpeter has a piano stuffed in behind him. All these people are sort of crammed together, and meanwhile they can't be actually up in a place so that'd be easier to see them, which would be in the choir area. They're actually down on the floor where the pews are because there's not room enough to fit them, because those pews cannot be moved and you don't have that flexibility of the space. So in the next slide, you'll see what adding these movable chairs allows us to do. Not only can we fit a lot more choir members up there, we also get in this project a movable organ console, meaning those keyboards that Eugene plays, that whole thing with the pedals and the keyboards and the stops all that can be moved. So in the next slide, you'll see an example of what an arrangement could be. So here is what we might do for an organ recital with a choir. You can remove those wooden panels, and you can move the chair. Gives us a lot of space. And for an organ recital, allows the audience to see, only hear what's happening, for a much more interesting and engaging performance. So that's what's going to happen in the nave and in the choir and chancel area. Here I want to again lift the roof off and show you a little bit more of what's going to happen inside the church. So you can see what we've talked about, the choir area, the sanctuary, but on the sides there's going to be some changes as well. On the right hand side, we're going to update the sacristy. That's sort of the kitchen where they prepare the Last Supper every Sunday as we remember it. And it's a small and cramped space with not a lot of storage. There's going to be new cabinets, new sink, and just a lot better organization of that space. On the lower right-hand side, it's our current vesting room for all clergy, all acolytes, all lay Eucharistic ministers, and I can tell you it gets crowded in there on Sunday morning. Altar Guild, we're all sort of on top of each other. It's bad for social distancing, and here you can see this is what it looked like on Christmas Eve. We're all just sort of, for lessons and carols, actually, we're all packed in there with Bishop High and Canon Normand and all of our helpers, but it's just a very cramped space whenever we have investing area just for clergy. If we go back to that, which, by the way, yeah, you can show the picture, Neil. So this room was designed first as an office for Charlie Higgins. There he is in our vesting room, sitting at his desk, our founding rector, because he was the only priest and he could use it as an office and a vesting room right next to the church. But obviously it doesn't work that way for us now. So in this new diagram, and Neil, you go back to that thing that shows the overhead view, you can see that in addition to that right-hand side change to the vesting room and the sacristy, on the left-hand side, you can see a dedicated space for just acolyte and lay Eucharistic minister vesting. It's a new space that has not been used before, and it'll be fantastic also for storage for Altar Guild and other ministries of the church. And that way just allows for a much more peaceful, worshipful transition into our Sunday morning services. So I walked you through those renovations. The other thing I just want to tell you now, and we don't have a picture of this yet, but just on the next slide, you can see that some of the additional changes. We're going to improve the lighting and landscaping, and also add a cam so that we can make sure we have a place to remember those who have already gone to be with the Lord. So that's in brief what we're doing in this project. And now I want to turn it over to Eugene Lavery to talk about the organ. And you can see there just briefly the overhead view of the entire church, what we're proposing. And now we'll turn over to Eugene to talk about this new instrument.
Good evening. The organ committee began meeting over the summer of 2018. And the overview of the committee's work was essentially we had to decide what was the best course of action with our current instrument and where to go with that information. So we quickly discovered, and through commissioning reports from some independent organ consultants, that the current instrument was both failing mechanically and also was not really serving the musical needs of this parish. Yes, we could have money upgrading this organ, but all the reports were unanimous that we could spend a lot of money on the current instrument and it still wouldn't really be what we needed, and the best course of action was a new organ. So then the next phase of the committee's work was essentially who builds a new organ and where do we get it? So we reached out to 5 organ builders, and eventually through a process of visiting some organs and having the builders come and propose different things for us, we selected Schoenstein Organ Company of Benicia, California. Benicia's in the Bay Area of San Francisco. Schoenstein are one of the most respected organ builders in the world, and they particularly specialize in building organs for Episcopal churches and doing the repertoire, which is mostly English and Anglican choral music that the Anglican and Episcopal Church is so well known for. Additionally, Schoenstein have shown expertise at building very impressive organs in challenging rooms, of which St. Albans is a challenging space. It is a comparatively small church. Acoustically, it has some challenges. The organ chamber isn't large, so in terms of getting a builder to build a world-class instrument in a smaller space, we felt they were the best option. The new organ will have a lovely warm tone. It'll have many interesting colors. it'll have a sound that fills the space but is not harsh. For those of you who attend here regularly, those of you who sit up the front probably find the organ very harsh. And those of you who sit in the back probably think you can't really hear it much at all, particularly when the congregation is singing hymns. This new organ will solve those problems. It'll be a lovely, lush, warm tone. It won't be harsh on the ears, but it would also add a lot of presence to the room. And combined with the acoustical improvements in the space, such as removing carpet and plastering the walls, we'll have a much more resonant space which will support congregational singing much better than what we currently have at the moment. Some of the features of this new organ will be a movable console, which Aaron has already spoken about a bit. This just allows us for when organ recitals are on, we're very visual people, and some of the most interesting things about an organ recital are actually seeing the hands and feet going at the same time and all the different sounds being selected. So having a movable console, instead of having a console stuck in a pit, lots of arrangements and greater visual connection with our audience. You think about if you go and hear a pianist play in a concert or a violinist, they don't put a screen up in front of the violinist and then you can't see them. People would think that would be kind of strange. So with the organ, people will be able to see the organ and see the console and see all the magic happen, so to speak. The organ, there'll be organ both in the existing organ chamber and also up in the gallery, which Aaron also spoke about. The organ in the gallery will be a mixture of some smaller pipes to accompany perhaps a small choir up in the gallery as a standalone instrument, but also some of the deeper sort of rumbling sounds of the instrument will also be up the back, which will help drive congregational hymn singing. So it's sort of an additional, helps just the organ up the front here, just help drive the sound from the back, because our organ here is always going to be the church is built and the organ chamber is just its own sort of room jutting off the side. So this kind of helps give the organ a bit of a leg up in driving congregational singing. The timeline for this project is the organ installation begins in September of 2021, which sounds far away, but it really isn't. And of course, all of the work you've been hearing about that takes place in the church, such as the new floors, the new walls, the choir seating, all of that will take place and be completed by the time the organ project starts, because of course you don't want to install a new organ and then bring a whole lot of dust into the room when you're ripping up floors and walls. So that is the timeline of the project. So the organ is really sort of the guiding piece that sets the timeline for the rest of this project. So the installation begins in September of 2021, and probably by about build the organ first in the org factory in Benicia, California, and then they unbuild it and ship it here, and then install the nearly 2,000 pipes back in the church. It's a fascinating process, and when it actually begins, the church will be completely full of organ pipes before they start putting them up in the organ chamber. And another thing I should say about this organ is our current instrument was installed in the 1950s. In the 1950s, many of the big organ companies, including Reuter, who built our organ, were installing a new organ in a church every 2 weeks. So many churches were being built and wanting organs. So there was no way to sort of have custom built organs for spaces. It was essentially, you have this much money, this much space, you get this organ. Nowadays, most organ companies are only building 1 or 2 or maybe 3 organs per year. So there's much greater degree of customization. So this organ is built for our musical needs. It is not a build model. It is built specifically for our needs, and we have been working with the organ company with its design for about the last year and a half. In terms of what partnerships this organ and what potential this new organ can offer us, Waco, unfortunately, is not a town that's blessed with an abundance of world-class instruments. We will certainly, I think, have the best organ in the Central Texas area. And this opens us up to partnerships to host organ concerts by the Baylor Organ Department. I've already had some of the choir directors at Baylor contact me saying, hey, when you have this new organ in this great new acoustical space, we'd love to sing a service of choral evensong or host concerts here. I've also had choirs from the United Kingdom and from around the United States say, hey, we'd love St. Albans to be a venue on a to the growth of the music program and for us to bring many more world-class musicians to Waco in addition to the ones who are already here. It will also, of course, allow us to bring many world-class organists here. I'm committed to, once we have this new organ, to actually use it frequently and bring in many world-class organists, in addition, again, to the ones who are here locally. So I feel that, in summary, this new organ will really accelerate the growth of this music program and make St. Albans a flagship music program in the Episcopal Church in the United States. Thank you.
I'm now going to give you a chance to meet some of the other lay leaders behind this campaign. Some of you may know Doug and Stephanie. Some of you who have joined us since we started meeting online would not know them, or maybe you attended a different service. We want to make sure you knew who are the people that are leading this effort. So I'd now like to welcome Stephanie Kuchera.
Good evening. Thanks, Aaron. My name is Stephanie Kuchera, and when we're meeting in person for 3 services, I would be sitting back on the far left, about 5 pews from the back. My husband's name is Stephen. Some of you may have met him. He works at Baylor University, and we have twin sons, Jackson and Nicholas, who are 24 years old. Stephen and I actually joined the Episcopal Church in 1990. He was raised Catholic and I was raised Lutheran, and we wanted to find a common ground. So the Sunday after we were married, we began visiting St. Paul's downtown and have been Episcopalian ever since, so 30 years now. We actually came searching for an Episcopal church in November of 2016, so 4 years ago this month. And I remember the reason I was told, go to St. Albans, you got to check them out. They have an incredible rector and what an amazing choir they have there. And I remember sitting back on the far left, that very first Sunday here, the praise, I realize it's not Easter, it's that season, and that is the norm here at St. Albans. So my job tonight is to tell you 2 things. It's why I'm excited about this project and why I'm choosing to support it. First of all, I'm thinking about our needs and I'm thinking about our timing. Our rector mentioned earlier that master planning began in 2014, so that's about 6 years ago. As an educational administrator, that really excited me to hear him say that. I've worked with master planning and strategic planning for many years in my career, and we have to start with our needs. And whether we're talking about our home, our workplace, other organizations that we're a part of, or our church, we have to think about our needs first. Our parish hall, what a wonderful, glorious celebration we had right prior to the coronavirus shutting down our operation physically. We had the wonderful dedication that evening and celebrated the opening of that beautiful building. And I know in the months and years to come, there'll be a lot of teaching and learning God's word, as well as other celebrations and events that will happen there. And what timing that we received the $3 million generous gift from an Episcopalian. And as Father Aaron said earlier, that really allowed us the opportunity to accelerate phase 2. So what next? When? When might we be able to do those next steps that are needed in our parish? Would it be 5 years? Would it be 10 years? Well, because of that generous donation in the spring recently, we're able to move on to those other needs. The Nave and the organ have been discussed. We've heard plans and seen renderings. The narthex, the restrooms, the choir, the organ, the audiovisual. What wonderful opportunities lie ahead of us. And I think about the church that I last came into this building on March 8th when I was serving as vestry person. And I remember thinking right after that, I hope I locked all the doors before I left that day. We worship an hour. It's to renew and restore ourselves. It's for how we live and work outside these four walls every day of our lives. So when I come here, and I'm so excited when we'll return to this space next year, I think about that worship experience. And I'll tell you, there are many times that we are in worship and I can't sing and I can't pray. I have to really stop because my voice begins to shake. And what happens next is the tears will flow. I feel like I'm so filled with the Holy Spirit because I think about how much God loves us and how blessed we have been by this parish and our leaders. And finally, why am I supporting this campaign? I'll tell you, it's simply because I was asked. I was asked to give to support the future of this parish. No gift is too small, no gift is too large. And in the coming week or so, you'll be receiving calls from members of our parish. And secondly, I want to be a part of honoring the work that was done by those who started this parish 75 years ago. They were into it, and it's our job to continue. And finally, I want to be able to provide for the needs of those who will come here now when we return and in future years. Thank you.
We now invite Doug Smith, someone who welcomed me when I first got to St. Albans, who's been here for some time. He and Lorraine are some of those folks that are just so faithful, a big part of not only this church, but of this community. So now you get to hear from co-chair Doug Smith.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Stephanie, for your eloquent speech. Many things that I was going to say, you have said so nicely. So I will keep my part a little shorter than yours. But I've been in about my entire career. And when Aaron asked if I would like to help in this Renew and Restore campaign, I said, absolutely, I'm excited. It couldn't have come at a better time for me as I retired after 22 and a half years at Baylor last week. So I am just so excited that I'll be able to participate and help in this so important campaign. And I think the reason it is so critical is we are actually preparing for the future. And that is so important. I want the memories that I've had so far to continue, not only for Lorraine and I, but for the entire congregation. And there are three points that I would like to mention that just automatically come back to me every time I when Lorraine and I come, most of the time when I'm an usher, I'll come early and Lorraine will come just before the service starts, but I will get here and sit at the back of the church, and I will just sit in the calmness and peacefulness that exists in this church. And I will watch members of the congregation that are here early praying and reading the Bible. It just means so much to me. And then the second thing that I think about St. Albans that's so important is the people. I've been to 8 different universities raising money for the athletic programs. So I come in contact, I have through my entire career with people. I've been a member of different churches at the different schools I've been to. And I just will say that the people of St. Albans are so different in my mind. They're just wonderful people, friendly. You couldn't ask for them to be better individuals than they are. And then of course, when you mention people, I think of the children of St. Albans. And every week, Lorraine in the back of the church, we watch when Aaron or Neil call all the children up for children's chapel. And I forget the ages, but one time I really thought I might start walking up and see what Aaron was would say to me when I was coming up with the children, but I didn't think that would be a good idea. But you see them come up, and Aaron always has something to say to them, and then he asks Stephanie to lead them out and to the children's chapel, and there's always a little child that takes the cross and leads the group. It's just a wonderful feeling in watching these children, and working for this campaign and preparing St. Albans for when they will be adults, I think is just something so special. Without bringing up the word music. Truly outstanding. It's known throughout the city of Waco, and I'm sure other areas within Texas and probably the United States. And one of our objectives of this campaign, and I know we will be successful, is getting a new organ that Eugene talked about. So that's going to make our music program even greater than it was and is. So I'm just so thankful to be a part of this campaign. Lorraine is excited. My wife is excited about being a part of this also. And I am ready to go forward, and am looking forward to talking and meeting with many of you during this campaign. Thank you.
And thank you, Stephanie. I'd now like to talk a little bit about some of the nickels and dimes, the dollars and cents of this program. If you've received your brochure in the mail, some of this you may have already looked at, but just want to make sure you understand how we're doing this and what it will cost. The new organ is estimated to cost $1.5 million. Then we want to renovate the church space, and that's $500,000. With any project like this, you get a construction loan to do the project, and then as it is completed, you pay it off with the pledges as they come in. So some interest expense has to be budgeted into this just for that time. And there's also the fees for architects and engineers and the different permits and all those things that need to be established. Asbestos remediation, all these things in an old space need to be taken care of. And then of course, it's important to have a contingency budget built in there as well for any unforeseen complications that arise. Our estimated cost is $0.5 million. Now, how will we pay for it? Well, that next slide will walk you through those items as well. So we currently have, thanks to advance donors who are very generous and have stepped up, $600,000 in existing pledges. So we're already starting with that wind in our sails. And I'd like to, again, mention how grateful I am to those donors. We also have existing phase 1 pledges. The R1 Foundation campaign for the Parish Hall and the Welcome Center, the parking lot that's now become our primary worship space these days, all those things were part of that large $6 million campaign we have just completed in this calendar year. And you know that we got that large gift that enabled us to pay off the remainder of that project, but we still had existing pledges that were coming in. I am one of those pledgers. Andrea and I made a 5-year pledge, and we still have time to go on that pledge for phase 1. So what we're doing now is, since that project has those one pledges, they come in, $1.5 million are being used to, again, accelerate this phase 2 Renew and Restore project. So that means to reach our $2.5 million goal, we need to raise in gifts and pledges an additional $650,000. And that's the goal of this campaign. So our first phase 1 campaign, that was $6 million. So this is a 10th of that. And I think we find that it is something that we will really be able to do with everybody's support. We already have 10 pledges that have come in since the mailing went out last week, so they have already started to come in. We had 2 pledges by email today and 2 pledges in pledge cards in church today already. So there's excitement that's beginning to build. So I'm confident that we'll get there. But some of you may look at that number and say, well, how will we do that? What would that look like? So the next slide, I'll walk you through a little bit of what that could be. So $650,000 seems like a large number. So let's say somebody $75 a month. That sounds good then, because 2021 is our 75th anniversary. So if you were given $75 a month, And in a campaign like this, you usually plan on doing it over a 3 to 5 year period. That's what capital campaigns usually involve with a pledge, a multi-year gift. So let's say you were giving $75 over 3 years. So that would total $2,700, $2,700. And you would tell us when you would begin giving that pledge, and we would use that as we then seek approval from the diocese for this project. So if everybody in the parish did that, we would need 240 pledges to get there. We have around 300 active members. So this is certainly an achievable goal. And we know that some people will give more, some people will give less. Some people will do a multi-year pledge, some people will do a one-time gift. But just to show you that this is certainly in the ballpark of possibility, even in this unique time. So if I could see the next slide. Another example would be somebody maybe like me that's in a current phase one. So let's say you're giving $100 a month phase one, and that pledge, which you made back in 2016, was a 5-year pledge. And so that will end at the end of 2021. So when you fill out your pledge card, if you think, well, I could do that amount for another 3 years. So you would then fill out your pledge card, and you would say that we are going to give over 3 years, $100 a month. That would be a total renew and restore pledge of $3,600. And so that's another way that that might look. And you would, when you fill out your pledge card, you would say, we will begin this pledge on January 1st, 2022, when our current phase one pledge ends. So that's another thing, another way this might look to achieve this goal. And then finally, you might be somebody who is planning your year-end giving, and maybe you're above 70 and a half years old, and so you have a retirement account that you require, you have to do it. And so you can do what's called a qualified charitable distribution. You can give to a nonprofit like St. Albans, and you should just talk to your financial advisors about that. But it's a really wonderful benefit for the church and for you. And that, so you could say, maybe I'll do my qualified charitable distribution at the end of 2020 or at the end of 2021, whenever you're planning for your tax and financial planning purposes. Maybe you do a one-time gift for $20,000. So those are all different ways that you could structure a gift. And as you think through your pledge, they might be options that would fit for you. So I wanted to walk through some of that. So when you pledge, we just want to remind you, consider a multi-year gift and tell us when you will start giving. And this is what the pledge card looks like. And you've probably received one in the mail, or if you haven't, you can pick one up at church, or we'll send one to you. But you need to make sure that in this space where I'll show you, for example, that one I talked about, the $2,700 pledge, you'd write that pledging $2,700 is the total. Begin giving our gift on. You would write the date then, and that will magically appear in the slide in front of you. January 1st, 2021, that you would maybe say you're going to give that over 3 years, and that would be $75 a month. And that just helps plan how we structure this project when you let us know how you're planning to give. At the bottom, you would put in your information, your name, phone, and contact info, so we make sure we have that. And then on the back of the pledge card, you can dedicate this gift in the memory of a loved one, or in thanksgiving, or in tribute to someone who's important to you and to your family. So that's how you would fill out a pledge card. And now Doug's going to talk to you about, once you've got that filled out, what do you do with that? Doug.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. First of all, if there are members of the congregation that have not received their pledge card, please give us a call, the office, and we certainly will get those important items to you. Basically, there's 3 very simple ways of returning your pledge card, which is necessary for all of us, so we get an idea of where the campaign starts. But for me, and I called the office on Friday, I'm kind of the old school. I just called the office and asked them to fill it out, gave it the amount, and I was done. And I received a confirmation email. So that's one way to do it. If you want to go online, you can do that also. Most of our younger generation will go online and have no problem doing it. Very simple. Or if you want to fill out a pledge card and bring it in the church, you can do that or bring it to one of the services. So there are many ways, but we do need to have your pledge card in by November 23rd, so that when Aaron and members of St. Albans go to the Episcopal Diocese of Texas on December 2nd, they can tell the diocese where they are in terms of the campaign, how much money they've raised, and sure to verify that it will be so feasible to continue this campaign. So it's very important that you get that pledge card in as quickly as you can. And then the last thing I will say, and I've been involved in athletic fundraising for over 40 years, is it just means a big difference. There might be some people in the congregation that think that, oh, my gift is going to be so small, it won't make a difference. Every gift counts. So please pray about what you wish to pledge or give immediately to St. Albans and get it to us by that November 23rd date. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Doug, Stephanie, Eugene, Florence, and Andy. And we now have time for Q&A. What questions do you have? What comes to your mind? You can type them in the chat, and Neil will read those out to me, and we will make an effort to answer those as quickly as we can. I will let you know just a couple things you may be wondering. When will this be done? The goal, again, pandemic is always going to be a factor here, and we'll have to see how things go. But the goal would be that we could enter our space and worship in time for Christmas of 2021. Some of you may be wondering, what will we be doing, assuming the pandemic is under control and we can return to something a little bit like normal? Where will we be worshiping? Well, we'll be worshiping in the parish hall, which was designed specifically to enable us to do that, so that we could, as an alternative worship space, or when the space is unavailable, have that as an appropriate and beautiful, accessible worship space. There's some other things you may be wondering about phase one. You heard about a playground, you heard about a fence on Waco Drive. Those things are what we call phase 1.5. And those are also the kind of between phase one and phase two. And those are also projects that are underway right now. And Barsh and Heimseth are working with us on those questions. So Neil, what questions are coming up from out there?
After you fulfill your pledge, you can give more.
Yes, after you fulfill your pledge, you can give more. Yes, that is correct. After you give more. This is a one situation for St. Albans to be in, that you're a church that is healthy, vibrant, growing, and full of supportive people. Again, I said earlier that we have 9 pledges in already. I was wrong. I checked. We have 14 pledges in. So again, they continue to come in, and the momentum is here. So you can definitely continue to give more. What else, Neil?
I made a pledge my entire pledge for 2021. Would it be better to start this in January of 2022?
So someone asked, I've made a pledge in 2021, and I don't know, Neil, is it clear that that's an annual pledge or a capital campaign pledge?
Not clear.
So Neil says it's not clear from the question, but let's just say, for example, you've made a pledge for the annual operating budget in our Being Sanctuary campaign. We do an annual stewardship campaign every year just for the ongoing ministry operations of the church, for our staff, for our programs, our operating budget. And many of you have just made a pledge towards that. And gratefully and thankfully, we are going to be able to hit the budget number generous pledges to make sure we can continue our ministry for next year. So that means a reduction in hours, a reduction in staff, or a reduction in programs. And that is an incredible blessing at this time. So thank you for enabling us to do that. Now, how does that annual gift tie into what you might give for this campaign? Well, that is something that is up to you. And again, as Doug said, we want to just invite everybody to participate, whether that number is big or small, however many numbers are to the left of the decimal is really not important. We just want everybody to give and take part. So, and if that means you need to plan ahead on not starting that until 2022, because your current situation doesn't allow you to pledge in 2021, that's fine. Again, the point of a pledge card is for you to think through and plan when you can give, how you will give, and how much you will give in a way that makes sense for you and that honors God and is a generous gift to this project, whatever the size of that gift may be. And that pledge just helps us with the planning process. So I hope that addresses that question. What else are we seeing, Neil? There are no questions in the chat. So with that, we'll come to a conclusion. And before we have Andy Wisely come up for a closing prayer, I want to show, well, you can come up, Andy, it's all right. I just want to show you one more picture. So this picture was taken this week in the attic above the vesting room and the sacristy. And I don't know if you can see what it says, but I'll read it to you. It says, "Charlie did it. Smith Building Company did it on the 9th month, 1949. And on this piece of lumber in 1949, Charlie Higgins, our founding rector, and a representative of the Smith Building Company, and they were also members of this church. And if you know Margie Allen, this is her family, her grandpa, and all these clouds of witnesses represented by what's on these boards. And so what is wonderful about this is these sacrificial visionary leaders had an idea in 1946. In 1949, they were building a space that we know. And we now essentially get to write our names on this board. And one thing that I'm happy to announce tonight is that for members of St. Albans, when we make a pledge by November 23rd, for the next 2 Sundays, all those who make a pledge are invited to, whether it's a penny or whether it's a lot more than that, we'll have a piece of lumber out there that you can also sign your names and will be incorporated into this project once we complete it. So just when you come to church on Sunday, be looking for that board to sign your name on it. And if you can't come on Sunday, we'll make sure it's placed available so you can stop by during the week and sign it when you make your pledge to the Renew and Restore Capital Campaign. And with that, I'd now like to invite Andy, but I think I might have seen a chat come up. Neil, is there something?
Yeah, so we have a chat, separate designation on checks, exactly which campaign and or annual.
That is a great question. So Andy, don't go away just yet, but you will get to pray, I promise. So that's a great question. When can be for you, annual gift, like annual ongoing stewardship pledge, just kind of your monthly gift, your tithe, plus your capital campaign pledges, phase 1 and phase 2, and just to add that all together in one check. But you should know that that administratively is kind of a knot that's difficult to untie. We can definitely handle it, and we do it all the time. But just know that it has to go through a lot more pipes and channels and create a lot more administrative work, which is not always the best use of our staff's time. So if you are able to write 3 checks, take those additional 60 seconds out of your life to write 3 checks if you are writing a phase 1, phase 2, and an annual pledge, that is really helpful. And of course, at any time you can go on our website and click on the blue Give button in the lower right-hand corner and set up automatic recurring giving so that it just happens quite easily from your perspective, and also is a great blessing to us as well. You can set up automatic bill pay through your bank if that's easier for you. So all these options, but the important thing is to keep those checks or gifts separate. It's cleaner for our bank, and is administratively much more simplified. Thank you, that's a great question. On your memo section, you're gonna write either annual gift or sort of annual stewardship, then or you can write phase 1 or phase 2, and that helps us know where to go.
Okay, we've got another question. We made our pledge for 5 years, but added another year when phase 1 and 2 were combined. Is that still current?
So there was a question here. Somebody made a 5-year pledge for phase 1, and then they decided to add on another year or 2 years to help us finish the phase 1 project. And is that still current? And what I would recommend that you do is you contact Nancy Bennett in our church office, our business manager, and she'll be able to answer really specific questions about where you are in your giving and what the status is of that gift. But that is a great question. Thank you very much.
Will this presentation be available online?
Yes, this presentation, so the question, will this be available online? And yes, it will. It is being recorded right now. We'll do our best to edit out that part where the video playback failed, so no one has to know about that except you and me. But we will put this online and make it available for our church members. It'll be on our YouTube channel, by the way. Anything else there, Neil? Well, with that, now it gives me great pleasure, without further ado, to welcome up Andy Wisely for our closing prayer.
Let's close in prayer. Dear Lord, we are joyful about this new beginning. In gratitude for the generosity of your overflowing grace, may we too be generous with the gifts that we offer to you as we do the work of the people. Help us to shine the light of Christ in this place. And now as we prepare, we call on you, our sanctuary, to renew and restore us using the Compline Collect. Be present, O merciful God, and protect us through the hours of this night, so that we who are wearied by the changes and chances of this life may rest in your eternal changelessness. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.